I'm Sheila Hirst, and I'm an executive coach and storyteller. And I'm here today to talk about how you can use the power of story to make your business case presentations come alive and really engage your audience. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is story, and then how to find the right story, and then what you need to do to tell it well. So, what is it? Well, it's the art of creating a two-way conversation between the teller and the listener by using words and actions to stimulate the listener's imagination. You get them to come along on your imaginative journey with you. And we're hardwired to tell stories. Our very survival depends on it. Since Ugg was a boy sitting on his cave mum's knee, he was listening to stories from his brothers and his fathers about fighting horned monsters out in the forest. And he learned how to behave and what to do and what not to do, not to wreak vengeance from the gods. So if you want your stakeholders, you want your senior managers and your peers to get your meaning, to be convinced and motivated by what it is that you want to convey, you need to start engaging those emotions too. Because the facts will only go so far. And of course you need them, but they appeal to the rational part of the brain. And when you hear facts in a presentation, your brain is going and you're going, does this stack up? Do I believe this? So if you really want to reach the deeper subconscious part, the emotional part that actually connects, you need to add in story as well. So why don't you use both? So for example, if you're taking your stakeholders or your managers or your team into a particular strategy that you want to adopt, why not make them the hero of the story, where they are right now, and then get them to go on the journey with you, fight the horned monsters of the competitors, the challenges that they might meet along the way. And when they finally arrive victorious at the end of their journey, by using your strategy, of course, you can then use facts again to actually act as proof points. So how do you find the right story to illustrate your business case? There are three things perhaps to bear in mind. The point that you want to get across, and what is the story going to be in service of? How well do you know and understand your audience? And what sort of story are you really confident in telling? So taking the first, if you really want to convince your organizational stakeholders of the need to change, and it might be impacting on their identity, their fears of who they are, their culture, their way of operating, their behaviors, the deeper the resistance, the better personal stories are. If you can mine your own experience for times where you've actually had to go through this particular type of change and tell them in a way humbly, that is a way to really connect with your audience. Make sure they're your stories, because phoniness can be picked out very, very quickly. And ideally, they're stories about when you've made mistakes and you've learned from those, rather than just being the hero of the story in case the ego gets in the way. If you want to highlight a left field approach to a business case, or you want to show how different types of people can add value to your presentation, then of course you can use illustrations from movies, from TV, or people inside your own organization who've come good with change. Or you can use examples, current examples, like at the moment everybody's using the examples of the footballers, of Raheem Sterling, of Harry Kane, coming from humble backgrounds, and determination and hard work has got them where they've got to. Or if you want to, for example, convince your senior managers or your stakeholders of the value of something that is proving very expensive, but an awful lot of work has gone into it, you can use an oblique story. Tell you a little one. There was a very rich woman who was going to go to Ascot, and she wanted the best hat to match her beautiful scarlet dress. So she went to the best hat maker in the land and she said, "Hat maker, I want you to make me a hat that is finest, that the women will gasp and the men will weep." He said. And he went to his shelf and he pulled out a scarlet ribbon that matched her dress. And he pulled out another tensely, crinkly ribbon that made a beautiful noise. Whoosh. And he went whoosh, 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 whoosh. And he produced a fascinator of such beauty that when she put it on her head, she nearly cried with joy. "How much," she said, "do I owe you?" He said, £10,000. "But it's just a few ribbons." So he turned his back and came back and handed her the ribbons. He said, "Madam, that's free to you." So you find a similar anecdote like that and people will nod and go, "That's right." So depending on your audience, what is their current state? What's their relationship to the business case that you're offering? Is it easy? Is it hard? How much have you got to convince them? Are they young? Are they old? What's the kind of stories do they like? What appeals to them? You need to do a little research there. How tolerant are they to fantasy? And how tolerant are you to be able to tell and use magic, fantasy, ideas, humor? You need to be comfortable with it. Or do you prefer a more straightforward story? And the best thing to do is to practice and find and mine stories from your memory, as we said, but also other stories that you have in your bag, and make sure that you have them ready to bring out, but not too often and not too many to the same people, otherwise they'll get very bored. So, of course, stories do need to be well told. Very few of us are improv experts. So it's worth spending a little bit of time actually, as I said, finding them, then crafting them and editing them, and definitely rehearsing them until you've got them in your muscle memory. And of course, you need structure. A story has to have a beginning, ideally a middle and an end. And it has to have somebody, a character doing something, a hero of some sort, that something happens to and they learn from, that something is a result of your telling the story. Try and use color in your story. Show and not tell. So make sure that people can see the scarlet ribbon, can feel the crunchiness of the sparkly one, can get the sense of outrage from the character. And if you can, use a conversational tone. Put the script aside. You don't need it when you're telling a story. It doesn't matter if you get the words in the wrong order or you can't remember them all. It's actually having that eye contact with the audience, suddenly being amongst them rather than having a list of points and PowerPoint slides, that really makes an impact. Use a conversational tone so that you are really engaging. So a quick canter, but I really hope I've persuaded you that it's worthwhile to use story in your business case presentation. And just to remind you that you need more than facts to engage people. You need to make those facts come to life, what they look like, what they sound like, what they feel like. And if you want people to do, see, or feel things differently, you need to engage their emotions with color and action and characters. Find a story that illustrates your meaning, craft it and tell it well. And if you start adding stories to your presentations, both formal and informal, you'll add interest, color, and engagement to your business case.